Hello, welcome back to Out on That Line podcast, and we have a big time review for you this week, folks. It is going to be, of course, the new Olivia Rodrigo album, You Seem Pretty Sad for a Girl So in Love. My name is Jeff, and I'm here, as always, with my co-host, Alex. Alex, how you doing this week?
Well, Jeff, I'll tell you one thing. I ain't that shy and I ain't that hard to find. So why don't you come on over here and show me who your daddy is? And don't pack a lunch because it sure as shit ain't going to take all day. I'm doing fantastic up here in North Central Maine, the thriving economic heart of Maine, truly. The cultural capital of New England, dare I say. Doing my best to live my best life. How are you doing over there in
I'm
Texas?
I'm doing very well. We're in similar places. You're up there in Susan Collins country, and I'm down here in fucking Texas,
Ted Cruz country, baby.
Ted Cruz country. Ugh. So Olivia Rodrigo, her third studio album. Obviously, we have done Guts. We did Sour. Actually, sorry, those are reversed. We did Sour, and then we did Guts. And now we have You Seem Pretty Sad for a Girl So in Love. We just did the Vince Staples episode, which was a very drastic departure sound wise for what they had normally done. Do you think Olivia Rodrigo was a fan of like New Wave and The Cure and those sorts of bands?
I'm not sure where you would get that impression. Is it the fact that there's unintentionally, apparently, a song called The Cure? It just thematically fits. Is it any surprise that just like Heaven gets name dropped in Drop Dead? Is it just a pure coincidence then that Robert Smith himself is featured on one of these songs, the first ever feature on an Olivia Rodrigo album, and it goes to The Cure's Robert Smith? Again, didn't have it on my Out on That Line bingo card, and yet it works.
Oh yeah.
And we get all kinds of that influence on here. New wave Olivia Rodrigo. Didn't know I needed it, but I got it.
Yeah. This album, I think, for me is, well, we both, I think, were really high on both Sour and Guts, especially Sour, because like what a debut that album was. This album for me, I think, really cements that as far as like the pop girls go these days and just pop music in general, like Olivia Rodrigo is like Mount Rushmore pop artist for like this time period. And if she keeps making albums like this, she might just become a regular old Mount Rushmore pop artist, like compared to any of the greats. What I really liked, I think, the most about this album, and I was a little worried because I loved that it was very like rock focused, like punk focused that she had previously. Like Brutal Out Here, I think, is one of my favorite songs that she's ever done, and it's just like such a good, like catchy kind of punk song. I was a little worried when I heard this album was not going to be like that similar kind of sound, and there's really none of that on this album. Like you have an unmistakably Olivia Rodrigo album, but it's kind of backed up by a completely different sound. And it's very influenced by a lot of bands that I love. Like she talks, like Melt With You also gets name dropped, like one of my favorite songs of all time. Robert Smith is on this album, and if correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Robert Smith does not do a lot of collaborations. Like I think in it, I don't think it's that he doesn't really want to. I think it's just that he doesn't care to. That he wants to make the music that just he wants to make. He is one of the most distinctive voices like in rock and roll history. You know Robert Smith when you hear him, and I think The Cure is looked at, as the best of those bands from that era. I mean, you had like Jesus and Mary Chain, you had like Ministry and New Order. You had a lot of bands that like kind of circled that orbit, but I think like The Cure was the sun for that. Like in the solar system of that genre of music, for me anyway, The Cure was the sun. And it's Robert Smith's voice. It's the sound that like very like chorus heavy guitar that they use. I think it's the sad lyrics sung in a very upbeat way. I think those are it. Like The Cure just feels like Friday I'm in Love. I mean, is one of the greatest songs ever written. It had every opportunity to be one of the cheesiest things you've ever heard, but it is just so incredible. And I think the admiration that Olivia Rodrigo has for that type of music, and I think for Robert Smith specifically, shines through so heavily on this album with the way that her and her songwriting partner Dan Nigro like write these songs. It feels like a pop album should. And I think with the power that her voice is able to create, I think that is a another level that she's taken. Like she's not just kind of yelping over punk rock beats and like, well, that sounded great. And like I think Driver's License was probably the best example of like what her voice is capable of previous to this. All over the place on this. Like you have a song Less, you have Stupid Song, um, You plus Me equals Heart Sign, What's Wrong with Me. Like she can go soft, she can belt it. Like I don't know that there is a better pop artist like in the game right now than Olivia Rodrigo after this album.
That's the thing, is it really does. Like Dan Nigro also works with Chapel Roan, and you can kind of hear some of, like, HOTTOGO. Like there's an affinity for like what we call Sprechgesang, and Olivia Rodrigo does it too. It's a lot of that thing she does the song, does it like this, da 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 da, and similar to the Chapel Roan thing, but it's that like kind of like I think the Dan Nigro formula to a certain extent
Mhm.
as part of it. But yeah, you look at the space that like a Chapel Roan occupies, Sabrina Carpenter. I would say Billie Eilish has even like moved. It's pop, I guess, but it's doing a lot of other things. Taylor Swift is
Ugh.
singer, songwriter, folk, country, whatever people want to try to do to elevate it. It's
Yeah.
pop at its like most basic form. But if you want like a Taylor, I will tear someone down to build someone up. A
Yeah.
Taylor Swift song is like, I hope he likes my sweater. I'm scared that he might judge me. And an Olivia Rodrigo song is like, I'm probably going to die alone. And I've accepted that about myself, but I'm too young to feel this way. And I'm kind of freaking the fuck out. And there's a lot of pressure on my shoulders. And I have a terrible picker when it comes to men. And I'm falling in love and I'm getting my heart smashed. And at the end of the day, that's what this is a concept album, really, from the like emotional journey of somebody who starts off in love and then winds up into like an emotional unraveling, like a bit of a spiral. And it's underscored by these very like introspective, intimate acoustic, like Less as an acoustic moment on
Ooh.
like really just stays where it's at. It's very I Will Follow You Into the Dark.
Mhm.
Just keeping it on that acoustic level, giving us that like really tender moment to then get these emotional, dramatic piano ballads that build and build and build. We're going to get back to those because I have some thoughts on that as they relate to the great Jim Steinman and the
Ooh.
great Meatloaf. There's a real sense of scale to this emotionally, more complex lyrics and composition than pop, like mainstream pop has a right to. You pick Drop Dead apart, and I intend to with you. It really is kind of a pretty fantastic fucking feat. Again, the perfect song, the perfect album is subjective. To me, Drop Dead is a perfect song, and we'll get into it. But yeah, to bring it all back around, your point was that this kind of cements her as like A1 person to beat in pop. I think so. I think for the maturation that has happened lyrically, musically, and vocally, she has really pushed her instrument and found new dimensions to it, expanded her range, found more control and confidence. She's doing more with it. And it really adds to a sense of scale on this that matches the emotional beats so perfectly.
Yeah. And I think Drop Dead, first song on the album, first verse of that song, and I didn't listen to any of the like any of the single, like I didn't listen to that when it came out as a single, because I wanted to wait for the album. I was like, I need to take this in the whole way. And I would at this point, like, I know I've talked about like the influence that Bruce Springsteen has had on artists. I'm about to compare somebody to Bruce Springsteen. Like, think about Springsteen's first three albums, right? Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey was where everybody kind of like, I remember John Landau wrote that article after he saw him live and he's like, I've seen the future of rock and roll and its name is Bruce Springsteen. And that was sour. That was like a new thing that we'd heard in pop music, and like Olivia Rodrigo kind of like crashed onto the scene, right? And then you have Guts, which has somehow like become more successful than Sour, but had fewer singles. It was maybe as an album like a little stronger, but that was like The Wild, The Innocent, and The E Street Shuffle. Whereas like if you're a Olivia Rodrigo fan, like just like if you're a Bruce Springsteen fan, like those two albums are very important, but they're probably less culturally relevant to the greater like rock and pop atmosphere than like their first albums were. And then Bruce's third album, Born to Run, Olivia Rodrigo's third album, You Seem Pretty Sad for a Girl So in Love. This is where they, I think, established themselves. This is where the flag was planted of like, I'm here to stay. I'm one of the best to ever do it. And I'm going to be here for a long time. In that first verse, I know, and the thing is, like, this first verse, it sounds very simple, right? And it sounds like something Taylor Swift would write. Like it's that those things do not sound like they're not dissimilar to each other until you like really look at it and kind of unpack those lyrics and like how it's written. So I know that the bar closes at 11, but I hope you never finish that beer. It's like it's saying something without having to explicitly say it, which is how Taylor Swift would have to write something like that. Is to explicitly, she would have to say another line of like, so that we don't have to leave and I can stay with you forever. It's like Olivia Rodrigo and Dan Nigro are very good at like the implication, right? Like you know what that means. It doesn't have to be spelled out for you. Like the exposition is there for you without it having to be in words. You know all the words to Just Like Heaven, immediately telling you where the influences for this album are coming from. And I know why he wrote them now that you're standing right here. And it's showing her appreciation for that genre of music, for The Cure and Robert Smith specifically. And then also allowing you to like get the feeling that's trying to be portrayed. It's allowing you to kind of take that journey with her. You get to figure that out. So it feels like an accomplishment listening to it, is probably not as much as it was to write it, but it still feels, it immediately feels like something, you know? And I think back to like Dua Lipa Future Nostalgia. And the first time I listened to that album, now I'm not going to say like the songwriting is at all comparable as far as like the levels of it or even like the musicality of it. I just remember the feeling that I got, that I was like, this is what pop music is supposed to sound like. And immediately with Drop Dead, that's the feeling I got.
Drop Dead was, and I did listen to it as the single because as a quick backstory, when Driver's License came out and I hadn't heard it, I was very skeptical, very cynical about it. Girlfriend of the pod was like, I'm going to play this for you. It's this song that's like blowing up on TikTok. And I was like, well, this ought to be great. And then I listened to it and I was like borderline weeping at the end. I'm like, holy shit, who is this person? So like fast forward to having that level of emotional buy-in already for Driver's License. Vampire did the same thing, like kind of came out and seized me by the lapels with like the sound, the emotion. Again, just another fucking absolute killer first single to drop off of an album. To then get Drop Dead, this was like pretty immediately a sit up and listen, like jolt up in your chair and be like, wait, I'm sorry, what? It's again a Jim Steinman level epic. The way that we talk about the collaboration between Jim Steinman and Meatloaf was to capture kind of the zeitgeist of the youth in the time that they grew up. It's in many ways a time capsule and a tribute, but trying to like capture the youth experience from a while ago. So now we have a leap forward, and Olivia Rodrigo is doing the same thing as a concept album on a grand scale. This song has grandeur. It is big and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like you could fit it in a cathedral. The way that Dan Nigro produces all of this and like mixed it, it's got so much depth. It's a weird visual example to apply, but it's like, imagine if you were in like a 3D model of a cathedral, or you were in a cathedral, like you get that sense of space and it's all used to its fullest. And the song builds and builds and opens up and adds new dimensions. It's always finding ways to like constantly reinvent itself, but it's hooky. And the chorus, I got to tell you, as far as like, you know, Sabrina Carpenter goes, and I love Sabrina Carpenter, but I can't really walk around the house being like, I get wet at the thought of you. Like, I don't want the cat to hear me saying that, but I can walk around talking about, you know, looking like an angel on the walls of Versailles. Nobody else is doing that lyrically. It's a great lyric. It's a great image. Like literally, they're making out in the line for the bathroom at like a club, ostensibly, and he's pushed up against the wall, and she looks at him. And it's like, you look like an angel on the walls of Versailles. Like it's so specific. It's mature. It's, I don't mean to make it like sound like overly cerebral, but it's so different again because Tay Swift would just be like, instead of like, you're looking like an angel on the walls of Versailles, she'd be like, you're looking like my husband and a real swell guy. Like it in all seriousness, I just having fun getting hits in on Taylor Swift, but in all seriousness, Olivia Rodrigo should enjoy that level of fame. And I think it's
Mhm.
escalating more and more with efforts like this. She is just so creative, and there's a maturity in her songwriting, wise beyond her years in terms of the musical choices, a great collaborator in Dan Nigro. Drop Dead to me is a perfect song. The scale, the sounds that are incorporated, like staying very true to pop, staying very true to the kind of pop rock elements of it, and then adding this like kind of Baroque pop on
Mhm.
top. Like for that to be a mainstream single is like lightning in a bottle to me.
Yeah, and it's it kind of reminds me of a lot of these songs like Matchbox 20, right? And I think Matchbox 20 is looked at by a lot of people as like this kind of like a jokey band, the same way people look at like Third Eye Blind or Hootie and the Blowfish. But it's like if you listen to those like the mainline albums from them, and like Matchbox 20 has hits on hits on hits on hits. Like Rob Thomas was a phenomenal songwriter, specifically the song Bright Lights. The way that that song just like starts very slowly and just builds and builds and builds. And I specifically love in Stupid Song, the second track on the album, the way that that chorus like winds itself up into like full-throated Olivia Rodrigo like belting. The way that that is written, I think is just so perfect, because while like that may not be the same level as like Drop Dead, the way that this one builds for Stupid Song is you can just feel the emotion. Like that's another thing with Olivia Rodrigo is, while this is pop music, right? And maybe there was another songwriter, but she makes you believe it. Like that's the thing of like what a great artist can do is like they can make you believe every word that they're saying. And I think that's a reason why a lot of pop music kind of fails, and like why Sabrina Carpenter, like a lot of those songs, because it doesn't necessarily feel like an album. And like why the Dua Lipa, what Endless Summer, what was the second, or Radical Optimism, right?
Radical optimism,
Yeah.
correct.
I think Endless Summer or something was a song on it, but like it just felt a little more empty, because I think like while Dua Lipa is a great pop artist, I think she's not like she's not like or she's a great pop star. She's not like a pop artist. And I think Olivia Rodrigo is a pop artist, where it's like this is the medium that she's using, but she probably could have done it in a lot of different ways. And I think she's unashamed to wear her influences on her sleeve, which has kind of bitten her in the ass before. Specifically, like Elvis Costello's like Brutal Out Here was, I forget what the song was. I think Pump It Up by Elvis Costello was like, there's a lot of similarities between the two, but he has said like, he's like, I probably stole it from someone else. Like he's like, I don't care. But like Taylor Swift had to make sure she got writing credit on one of her songs as well, because it sounded similar enough, and like Olivia Rodrigo's dumb enough to say it was inspired by it. I think the fact that she's remained unafraid to like show those influences, but it's still so distinctly Olivia Rodrigo, is like, I love The Cure, and I hear The Cure all over this album. Like I hear that era and that genre of music all over this album, and it's perfect. Like you still don't get the sense this is anything except for an Olivia Rodrigo album, because you still get those runs. Like Chappell Roan did the same kind of thing with the Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess. Like that was a big part of like, because she's got those pipes that she can like deliver that. Olivia Rodrigo's got those pipes too. But I think what the difference between them is there's almost like I guess like a kitschiness, I guess, to like Chappell Roan. It's like it feels almost like a very tongue-in-cheek kind of experience with her. Like, and it's very much meant to have like a song of a certain time kind of feel. Like Olivia Rodrigo songs, like especially this album, they feel timeless. And it feels like no matter when these came out, they probably would have been the biggest pop album of that time, no matter when it was.
And I think again that sense of scale is getting bigger and bigger with each album. And I think it's going to take her to different genre places because if you draw a line from sour to, I'm just going to call this one sad girl, from sour to here, vastly different, but sharing the same DNA. And it's a gradual kind of morph over time as preferences change and new influences are introduced. Like, look how long it took me to get into Grateful Dead. I consider myself Olivia Rodrigo's contemporary. Now is she 23 and I'm 36 and she's massively successful pop star and I'm just a deadhead? That's up for you to decide. But you know, but in all seriousness, like you find things often later in life, Tanner with his unfortunate fish awakening later in life. Like your tastes change, you find new things. I remember when Steely Dan and Elvis Costello got introduced into my rotation and they've never left. And they're like Lyme disease, baby. Once you got it, you got it. And I happened to hear some Elvis Costello on this. She splits the difference between she's not going to go for a basic bitch lyric like Taylor Swift, but she's also not reaching for like overly complex Elvis Costello. Neil Peart wrote incredibly like meticulous, weird, specific songs. And the Dragon King. She's not going for like the kind of poetry of a John Prine, but she's not going to settle for just like basic sentiment, like any sentiment you get from any pop song. Like these songs are very relatable, but it's the best combination is relatable coming from a very specific point of view and a very specific personality. And this is dripping with her personality. Again, the themes that she's talking about, the growing pains of like garden variety maturation, but then also in the lens of being a famous person. But she doesn't really like ride that aspect too hard, keeps it to primarily a human experience. It's very relatable. Because, like, Billie Eilish will do the song about the Gilded Cage, and you get it. It all makes sense. It's not particularly relatable. Olivia Rodrigo has a ton of relatable perspective on this album, brought to life in really unique ways. Like you get like the paranoia and the insecurity of something like Maggots for Brains, which is like Olivia Rodrigo, maggots for brains. Like the visuals don't go together, but it's indicative of a state of mind. And this is where we get those super dark wave right out of the Cure guitars. So musically, it's kind of matching the mood. She does a great job of building these compositions that perfectly suit these stories she's telling. She really does storytelling more than just like, bop, 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 super basic scenario. I saw you at the club and this, that, and other thing. It's very specific. It's incredibly compelling and it's incredibly well told. So I think as a result of having that like storyteller instinct, again, it's a good match for, Jim Steinman, God rest his soul, Meatloaf, God rest his soul. But she, I think, has that same sense of scale and grandeur in the tank. And the next thing she does, whatever the influences are, I think she's just going to keep opening up and finding new dimension. I have seen the future of rock and roll, and it is Bruce Springsteen, I think, is an apt kind of comparison in this context. Like I can see Olivia Rodrigo's future, and if everything goes well, she will go down to be remembered as like, yeah, the big thing. Like Taylor Swift occupies the space she occupies, but like in terms of everybody else, like Olivia Rodrigo is doing something highly emotional and highly unique that no one else is doing.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, I think Olivia Rodrigo is going to continue to pull new fans in again and again and again with everything that she comes out with. It if it stays at this level, like right, if she continues doing stuff at this kind of quality level. I think the thing with Taylor Swift is that's a machine that's in motion. Like there's nothing else that's ever going to unless she has some massive scandal, and I'm not even sure there's anything she could do that there's not a huge contingent of people that would just totally ignore it and be fine with it. Like she's one of the very few people that has not spoken out against the current administration. Well, every other single pop girl has done so. And it's kind of telling that it's like the silence is kind of telling us everything we need to know about how you really feel. Is like money seems like it's the most important thing to her. And it's not that she's, maybe there's some decent Taylor Swift songs back in the day or something that I just don't know about, but I don't think anything she's produced recently could be considered like at all, like no Taylor Swift song I've ever heard would crack this album by Olivia Rodrigo, would crack any of the Olivia Rodrigo albums. There's just a different level of, I think, earnestness to it. There's a different level of authenticity to it. We always like to use that word here. Um, and I think there is a love for the music first from Olivia Rodrigo. Like it seems like the business is just the business to her. Like that's fine, but she would be making this stuff anyway, no matter how successful it was. I think you mentioned a song like Maggots for Brains. What a song title, right? Like you don't think that's going to mean anything at all. But then you have the second verse in that everything feels moldy like the fruit that's in my fridge. And everything that's funny, I wish I could tell to him. And sometimes at a low point, I even wish for a tragedy because I know he'd come over and take real good care of me. And the levels of like thought process to go through and write a verse like that, where it's not just saying, oh, I feel bad, everything's gray, everything sucks. It's the self-awareness to know that like you would be capable of coming up with something bad that happens just to get them to come over. And the idea that that doesn't have to be spelled out. Like she's delivering this stuff with such earnestness and such authenticity that she can write a verse like that and you know exactly what it is. You know exactly what that feeling is. Like you miss somebody so much that even if something terrible happened, you'd be happy just because it would bring them back to you. Like that is a level of songwriting and a level of delivering that. Now, I don't know if like she specifically wrote that or if this was all written, like lyrically was all written by Dan Nigro, whatever it is, but the fact that she delivers it the way she does is what makes this album so incredible. That even a song called Maggots for Brains can be as good as that.
The fact that, yeah, you can, again, it's a weird fit, Maggots for Brains, and it's the most like outwardly Cure influenced, to the point where you might be able to say it's a tad gimmicky, not hokey or hacky, but a tad gimmicky, but it totally works. Um, so yeah, the fact that you can do that and it wears its influences on its sleeve. You can do something like Stupid Song, which starts off as a piano ballad before it just, again, in a way very similar to I Would Do Anything for Love, not to the same scale because that song just has so much going on,
Yeah.
but like the same way that like you better believe me, like by the end, the way that it's like built up to that emotional crest, and then anything, like there's a lot of dynamism and moments where you stop and catch your breath, and then moments where your breath catches you. You know what I mean? Like there's a great emotional composition on top of the music, that I think, again, on a smaller scale, but is achieved with, Stupid Song. Um, and then you get something like Less. I wanted to vomit when I heard that song. It's one of
Oh
the
my
saddest things
God.
I've ever heard. Robert Smith probably heard that and went, "Damn, girl, pull up.
Yeah.
You better put your flaps down before you take off." Like it's just like brutal, just her and the acoustic guitar. And I don't know if Nigro played the guitar on that one or if it was someone else, but it was just, again, like an I Will Follow You Into the Dark, very stripped down moment, a very, very important emotional beat on the album where we catch our breath to go into the home stretch. Phenomenal. And then one of my other favorites on the album, What's Wrong With Me, which is, of course, the one that features Robert Smith of The
Mhm.
Cure. That is a feature done the way I love to see features. Like, what was the one off Musgraves? Divorces and Horses with
Oh,
Miranda Lambert.
yeah.
Again, gimmicky, but it works, and it's a great, you want to call it a duet, you want to call it a feature, whatever. Um, but to me, this Robert Smith feature is done right, where they're supporting one another. There's different perspective. It goes together in a way that I make fun of Uncle Grandpa's Spooky Halloween Party off the Miley Cyrus Plastic Hearts album, but Miley Cyrus and Billy Idol go together. And in that same sense, Olivia Rodrigo and Robert Smith go together. You
Mhm.
wouldn't think it, but there's the maturity of what she's singing about and her like very young, increasingly flexible and interesting voice. And then he kind of vocally has this, like, I would almost call it like a Chalamet quality. Like, you don't picture like Robert Smith, like 60 something year old Robert Smith. You picture like him being the young guy in this
Mhm.
scenario. You totally buy in. It totally works. Like, there's characters baked into
It's
this.
because his voice is the same as it ever was.
Same as it ever was.
Yeah.
Another guy who kept it is David Byrne. But you know what I mean? Like, it's there's a great balance between them, and then the support with each other, especially on the chorus. Went to the doctor. Like, there's great emotion, there's great
Mhm.
musical moments. It's a the song itself on an album of hooks. This one song is a hook factory. So much to be invested in, so pulled off so well, to have that be the first and only feature on one of her albums up to this point. It was pulled off flawlessly. If you have one critic, I might, if I had to cut two songs, I would cut Purple. I don't super duper love Purple all that
Mhm.
much. I might cut Expectations, but I struggle with it because it's grown on me, like the kind of sound grew on
Mhm.
me. I don't like the she's got expectations. I think that's hokey. So for that reason, I might also cut that. For like a fat trim, if I was going to do anything, I would just maybe, yeah, tighten it up a tiny bit. But I mean, what else is there for me to say at this point? It's got scale, it's got depth of emotion, it's showing her maturity, how she's developing as an artist, as a writer, as a singer. It's just kind of like a great, it's going to be a milestone album for her. And it is one of the strongest things I've heard all year. I'm going to go ahead and give this a 9.5.
Oh, you're not gonna go. I'm going all the way. This one is
You
a 10
going all the
out of,
way?
this one is a 10 out of 10 for me.
All right.
There was like, if you were to pick, I know you mentioned Expectations and Purple as songs that you could maybe take off, but it's like if you stuck those on anyone else's album, they would be like probably one of the stronger songs on that album. So like on this album, maybe they're weaker than the other ones, but it's like it's like you're talking about, you know, the rest of the album is Dale Earnhardt, and those are Dale Earnhardt Jr. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
still great in their own right. And the fact that like I have to imagine that having Robert Smith like come in and do that song with her had to have been like when Tracy Chapman agreed to do Fast Car with Luke Combs. That had to have been like a absolute fall on the floor moment for her that he decided he would do that. Because he has done collaborations. I think he's done a lot of like covers of other people's music and stuff like that. But he's like very like pretty reclusive as far as like what he puts out there of himself. And to like be on the album of one of the biggest pop stars in the world right now, it's like Robert Smith is honestly, I don't think he's ever really cared about doing anything like that. So like he wasn't doing this to just, oh, let me get on something popular and get introduced to a new generation. Like I don't get the sense he's ever really given a shit about like that being a motivation for something. I think he genuinely truly does love her as an artist. I think he has a respect for her. I think he sees whatever it is that you think is like the right thing in a musical artist. I think he sees that in her. And the fact that Robert Smith is an unproblematic king and all he has ever done is make great music and basically has given her his stamp of approval is, I think that is a bigger deal than I think people are kind of making it out to be right now. I think when we look back on that and the fact that he is the first feature that she's ever had on any of her albums as one of the biggest pop stars, and like he's the one that she picked of all people. Like how many people her age, how many girls her age even know who The Cure is, let alone who Robert Smith is? You know,
Yeah.
maybe they've heard Friday I'm in Love in a retail store or something like that. But I mean, the idea that she has such a depth of knowledge of music that's happened before, I think is exactly why this album is so good and why she's been so good to this point is an understanding of what's come before you and how you can like build on that foundation. Like this is, I don't know if I would say perfect album. I guess since I gave it a 10, it like that's kind of what I'm saying.
Well,
But like
yeah.
the feeling that I got from this album is it's as good of an album as anything else we've listened to this year, and might even be the best so far.
It is high in the rankings so far as we head towards the midpoint of the year. I'll be very curious to see what she gets into next, like what kind of music she discovers. And she's the kind of person that clearly can't help but indulge it and see how she can do with it, put her stamp on it. So I'm excited to see what comes next. If it's more of this, great. If it's more
Mhm.
pop punk, great. If it's more pop rock, great. There's really nothing she can do. She has total investment from me up to this point. Not that it was in doubt really before, but like, I mean, it's the hat trick. It's 3 fucking impeccable albums to
Mhm.
start your career. Pretty fucking good.
Yeah. And I know that we have done those other 2 albums. And Alex, where can the folks find those other 2 albums?
Well, I'll tell you where you're not going to find them. You're not going to find them sitting on your ass, eating Pringles, praying to the Lord. You got to do a little more than what you're doing right now. If you want to find the answers, okay? You have to be an active participant. You're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. And your problem is you are not going to youtube.com/C/out on that line. And the solution is to go to youtube.com/C/out on that line, where you subscribe to the channel. You click the little bell so that you get notifications we put out new content. You hit the thumbs up to like the video. You hype the video. You share it with a friend and you leave comments. Our comment section, what an incredible menagerie of freaks and hobbyists and combative enthusiasts and pretentious know-it-alls and highly interesting people and Australians. I mean, we've got a lot of shit going on at youtube.com/C/out on that line. And we invite you to be a part of it today. So again, subscribe, like, notification bell, leave comments. God love you. Go with God. He's gonna, ain't that Jesus? Won't he do it? youtube.com/C/out on that line.
And folks, I'm going to ask you one more thing other than what Alex just told you to do and go to the page, subscribe, like, hit the bell so you get notifications, all that fun stuff. I'm going to ask you to join me in a prayer circle to bring Jim Steinman back from the dead and write Olivia Rodrigo's next album. So we can hear what that sort of thing would be like, because it would be incredible. So join me in that, folks. And until next time.